Hey friends, my name's Will Fall, and I've recently read Can't Judge a Book by Its Murder, which is by Amy Lillard. If you don't know Amy Lillard, it's okay, neither did I when I started this book, but she is primarily a romance author who's also written a few cozy mysteries, which, as far as I can tell based on my research, just means a murder mystery but with like cozy vibes or something. And so she's more, as I said before, she's more well known for her romance work, such as like Amish Christmas Promise or One More Time for Joy or The Amish Matchmaker. So, like, generic Amish romance, but she has had a decent number of these cozy mysteries under her belt. This actually being her fifth book out of 11 that she has written. So this is, of course, Can't Judge a Book by Its Murder, and it follows Arlo Stanley, the owner of a small bookshop in the town of Sugar Springs, investigating the murder of a famous author, Wally Harrison, who was found dead on her front sidewalk on the day that he was supposed to do a book signing at her store. Arlo's best friend Chloe, who was an early love interest of Wally and also the mother of Wally's child, was arrested for Wally's murder because she was the last person to speak with him, as Wally had gone into the bookshop a little bit earlier, where Chloe was the only person in the store at the time. And so Chloe, being the last person to see him alive and also someone with a deep history with Wally, was accused of the murder and arrested. And so the plot follows Arlo and her book club as they hunt for this murderer in order to clear Chloe's name and hopefully save their friend. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. As an author and someone who works at a bookstore, I really enjoyed the setting of a bookstore. I sort of wish they played into that more, but I'll get into some more of my dislikes a little bit later. Things that I like about the book is you can really tell that it's supposed to be this cozy mystery vibe because it's cozy. The atmosphere is really apparent throughout the entire book, and you can really just feel like you're in this weird little town of Sugar Springs, and it's really nice. The main character, Arlo, is also really well-rounded. Like, she has a bunch of interests, she has a bunch of motivations beyond just saving her best friend, and she's really easy to root for. You want her to succeed. And the concept of the mystery is intriguing. As I said, I'm a writer, so I work in a bookstore, avid reader, so the idea of a famous author being killed in front of a bookstore is just a very fascinating concept for me, and it really combines a lot of my interests. But unfortunately, it wasn't my favorite book. So Amy's romance author tendencies really showed through in this book. Every character, from like the main character of Arlo to even like side characters that would only show up once, had some level of love interest that they were enraptured in, and that would be a major part of their character throughout the entire story. Giving a few lists here, Arlo is romantically involved with the policeman on Chloe's case, whose name is Mads, and a private investigator who was hired to hunt for Wally's murderer, named Sam. That romantic interest constantly stands in the way of the plot. Slight spoiler here, right near the beginning of the book, Sam is talking to Mads in Mads' office at the police station, and Arlo immediately thinks, oh, they're talking about me, and then it feels weird for the rest of the chapter, even though they could also be talking about the murder that had happened like 2 days before. If you don't like romance books, I would not recommend you read this one because at some points it really just seems like a romance book with a few murder mystery elements instead of a murder mystery as a whole. Also, something that I find really painful about the book is a lot of the evidence that gets put forward is really just disconnected and weak unless it's pointing directly at Chloe. And in some cases, this could be used as like, oh wow, like everything looked like it was pointing at this person, but this key piece of evidence makes everything just turn and point at this other person instead. But this book isn't the case. There's a lot of things that sort of are brought up as potential pieces of evidence, but then are just sort of dumped in the side. Like, it's never really addressed again. Amy never addresses them again. So there's a slight spoiler here that will become more. I'll give another spoiler right before I get to the heavy hitting stuff. But the slight spoiler is after Wally's death, somebody went through the bookstore and crossed out all of the photos of Wally on the back of his books in his about the author section. This was a big mystery, and everyone was like, oh, who could have done such a thing? But then it was immediately dropped, and no one really ever said it again. I don't even think that the murderer admitted to it or anything like that. So something I just really love about murder mysteries is this idea of all the evidence coming together and being interconnected, and the story sort of unfolding as the characters learn more about these different clues and the different evidence for whodunit. But unfortunately, there was a lot of loose ends here that just never really got fixed or tightened up, and so I felt a lot like the murderer honestly should have gotten away with the kill. It did not seem like the murderer should have been caught in the way that they were. Speaking of, this is where I'm going to get into the really heavy spoilers. Like, my next sentence is going to be who killed this rich bookseller, this rich author. So hold on to your hats. If you don't want to hear about this, I suggest you leave now. Thank you for watching. But for those who do want to hear about it, here we go. So Wally was murdered by his assistant/mistress, a Russian immigrant named Ina. Ina killed Wally because she had actually written Wally's most recent best-selling book, but Wally had taken the credit for it in exchange, allowing for her to come into America as an immigrant, but then published it under his own name, shared none of the profits, and left her out of the will for the most part. I think she only got a laptop and a desk in his will, which when you're a famous and rich author and you just stole this person's book, not the greatest thing. However, she tried to pin the murder on Wally's wife, whose name was Daisy. There was a whole bunch of different ways that she tried to do that, but all of them really fell flat. I'll get into that a bit later. And right at the end of the book, she was confronted by Arlo, who triumphantly brought her to Mads, the police officer, and she was arrested and Chloe was free. I don't think the ending works, though. So, as I said before, Ina wanted to pin the murder on Wally's wife. However, when Chloe is arrested, a lot of the evidence starts pointing towards her, even though it was originally supposed to point towards Wally. Not Wally. Even though it was originally supposed to point towards Daisy, Wally's wife. So, at the scene of the crime, an earring is found, like a fancy diamond earring, and one of the comments is, oh, this looks like an earring that either Daisy or Ina would wear because they're related to a very wealthy man. But instead, Chloe's apartment finds the matching earring. And so later this is explained as Ina breaks into Chloe's apartment and plants the earring as evidence. Even though she doesn't want Chloe to get arrested, she wants Daisy to get arrested. And that's a constant thing throughout the entire book, is she is constantly pointing the finger at Daisy, even though she's also actively planting evidence to incite Chloe instead. So that didn't really make a lot of sense to me. However, the thing that really sort of ruins the mystery for me was the way that Arlo put it all together. On page 291, there's a quote from Ina, who is talking to Arlo. The quote reads, "Of course, she is not the type. She is a sweet person, no? Sips her tea from dainty little cups, her marmalade cat curled at her feet. Duh, I know the type, and she is not it." So that seems like an innocent enough line, but for some reason Arlo really clings to it, and she determines that the only way she could have known that Chloe sips from dainty little teacups and has a cat, has a marmalade-colored cat, is because she broke into Chloe's apartment. Which What makes it more painful is Ina got so close to what I would consider like a perfect rejection of this evidence. When she's confronted by Arlo, she says, "I have seen this cat. Yes, he's been in the store and in the police station. He is a well-traveled beast," which has happened. After Chloe got arrested, the cat was taken around the town to sort of be taken care of as Chloe was in prison. So Ina saw this cat multiple times and knew, oh, that's Chloe's cat. And so the marmalade cat at her feet, totally invalid as a reason that she broke into the house. But the dainty little teacups, no one's ever seen the dainty little teacups unless you've been in their apartment. There's no way that Ina could have just been like, oh, I was making an assumption, or, oh, I heard that Chloe likes tea, so she would drink out of the common teacup. So instead of refuting the evidence in a way that would have totally let her off the hook, she panics, punches Arlo in the face, and tries to run away. And also, Mads shows up. Throughout the entire book, Mads has been like, this is very, like, weak evidence. This isn't strong in the slightest. But for some reason, right at the very end, Arlo goes, I know who killed Wally. And Mads is like, I trust you 100%, let's go. And then he shows up and it's like, you're under arrest because you said that Chloe drinks from teacups. How dare you? It just doesn't work in my head. And also, the fact, this quote, of course she is not the type, is on the page 291 of the book. The book has 309 pages. So in less than 30 pages, it's gone from all the evidence points towards Chloe to the real murder is behind bars. And that's not a satisfying conclusion. So while I love the atmosphere of the book and the concept of the plot itself is just not tight enough for me to enjoy it. And so I can't recommend this book, unfortunately. However, if you are interested in a primarily romance book with a few tinges of murder mystery drawn into it, this might be something you enjoy at least a little better than I do. So that's about it. That's all I really wanted to say on this subject. I just finished reading it and I felt I have to tell someone about this. Thanks for listening. See you next time.